All right.
The completion of the railway from China to Iran just occurred the first week of June. And yep, the China-Iran corridor has been put into operation. Can you imagine that? Only less than 3 weeks ago.
That's
I do
exactly what I
believe
was
it was
talking about.
the last day of May. And then suddenly we are in this shooting war with Iran. And what do you think the possibilities of statistically are that this Belt and Road Initiative has been planned for what, 40 years? Really in earnest, the last 20, since China's come on with the the WTO, and they had all these grand plans. They got the new BRICS currency. They've moved that forward. And then suddenly the railway that is connecting goes all the way through Urumqi in China, and then it goes to Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and all the way through. Now, this is the shortest route from China over to Iran. By the way, 20% of all the oil that China uses daily comes from Iran. They're also subsequently going to be building a pipeline that goes across this area here. And the interconnected nodes are already built in Kazakhstan, which is the largest country coming across there. And you can see Kazakhstan, that pink one there. There's a southern route and a northern route also. Now, the northern train route is going to take that from Iran through Kazakhstan, where all the pipelines are built already. The only thing they have to do is get through Uzbekistan and get that pipeline connected. And then from Urumqi over there, China already has pipelines as well. So there's only that little gap there between direct access of Iranian oil to China. They don't have to put it on ships anymore. And think about what happened in World War II, those of you fans of history. The U.S. cut off Japanese oil from Indonesia prior to Pearl Harbor happening. The Japanese didn't wake up on a Thursday and say, you know what, these Americans are bad. We're going to go bomb Pearl Harbor. We want to try to take Hawaii. That didn't happen. What we did first was we cut off access to their oil out of Indonesia, which is still a major producer on the planet. We blockaded that so no oil could go to Japan, forcing them to retaliate like that. You know, you read in the history books about how this was a forced operation. They knew the response Japan would do in advance. So what do you think is going to happen when we cut off 20% of China's oil on purpose here? You think China's going to go quietly into the night and go, well, I'll find 20% more oil somewhere else? Negative, because they're already in the BRICS aligned nations. So they're trading commodities and swapping gold and different minerals to pay off that oil. They're not even using cash settlement a lot of times for these oil trades. That's not available in the world market. You're paying cash. So it's almost like we see the same thing. When Saddam Hussein wanted to go to a gold-backed currency away from the US dollar, suddenly he has weapons of mass destruction, George Bush, which we never found. And also in Libya with Muammar Gaddafi wanted to move to a gold-backed system, not just entirely gold-backed, but accept any currency for payment for oil in addition to gold. And suddenly he's a bad boy over there, and then Hillary's laughing on his grave. Anywhere we've gone in these countries that wanted to change systems, we've seen this carnage along the way when they try to step away from dollars. This is no different. They're trying to get Iran and China away from this symbiotic trade relationship back into the open market where you need to pay and have dollars for this oil trade. Like they're losing trillions of dollars by not having this, China and Iran and Russia in the loop. Trillions. That's supposed to be earmarked for U.S. money, dollar settlement. Those trillions every year we're losing. But this, now, again, I'll ask you statistically, just use your common sense here. This railway completes itself 2.5 weeks ago, and suddenly we're in there bombing it, or, there's proxies in there. Full-on global war to stop this transit from happening. It just doesn't seem logical. You can't tell me 2 weeks ago this goes functional, and then suddenly we, Iran, America, are in there having a party on the borders or over Iran. Now this is just one link. This is a spur. This is the main line. Now there's going to be spur lines that they've been working on coming off of here. Every single nation that's along this route is in the BRICS. But there are spur lines that go through and off this main line, and every single one of those accessing more mineral deposits, more oil deposits, and major cities along this way as not only commercial transport for bulk goods, but also on the what you consider regular passenger routes. This is the be all to end all rail route, the most modern on the planet that's been connecting between these countries to run commodities and people. And then alongside that, not exactly right next to it, but along that, there's going to be the world's longest oil pipeline that's already near completion. That's that last section that's not completed yet. And once that happens, if they were to tap into the Syrian connections with the oil pipelines, they could connect all the way over into Turkey. And then that puts the US and its allies completely out of any of that whole trade over there. Completely. That's a great map. This is one of the best maps. Now, Turkmenistan, that's where that missing piece is. Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, the rest from Kazakhstan all the way over to the border at Kashgar, all the way over there into China. That's already complete. Kazakhstan has by far the largest oil pipeline network across that area there. So now, how many times have we heard that Syria was the pinch point and all these things about Syria because Syria did not want to let the transit of Western controlled oil through the nation. They were going to let Iranian to Russia connections go through. And then you look at Tbilisi, or Tbilisi as they call it in Georgia there, and why there's so much turmoil in Armenia. And what was the color revolution in Georgia? They just did not want these transit routes. Look from Russia to Iran. What sits in the middle of that? Georgia, Republic of Georgia, Armenia. See, they don't want these connections to happen because that literally bankrupts half of the planet. Like controlling the resources of energy, if anybody has not been there, I mean, we've seen this. I mean, how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have died over this black substance that comes out of the ground to control it. Private armies, sovereign armies controlled by nations. And, for them in the Israeli news to come and say that Turkey is next after Iran, and they were very serious when they said that. Now, it's gone so far off that now they know who's next on the hit list. Like the awareness and the hair on the back of your neck standing up should be well in front view here that
Did he freeze? I think you're gone, man. There we go. Hey, was Ryan running the map there? Anyway, no communication here. All right. This is what we call interference from the artificial intelligence. Could you put it, Ryan? Could you put it back on that map? That the other one right before this one. Yeah, right there. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Is what I was starting to talk about. The part you're missing here, we just left $85 billion worth of U.S. military in Afghanistan, which is right above Pakistan. You see, if we control the skies over Iran, we already have the skies over Iraq, Syria. You see that straight pipeline over that. What they're trying to do is cut off this entire region to China. And if you look north of the Black Sea there, that's where the Ukraine-Russia debacle is. So this is what I was talking about. China actually borders Afghanistan. So whoever controls Afghanistan controls the military might in this entire region. So this is what they're playing for right here, is trying to cut off Iran. And of course they would have to do Turkey. The problem is Turkey is a flip-flopper. And this is also the same area that they want to make an Islamo superstate. So that would include Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, and all that. They want to get that stuff back. But in reality, Western forces, including, you might as well include Israel, control this whole corridor right here from Jerusalem to Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and now we're bombing the hell out of Iran to get rid of anything that they could do to us in the sky. So we'll now control this entire airspace all the way over to Afghanistan, which borders China there. But if they can complete this rail line, you can see where the conflict will be happening. It'll be happening right here in this mountainous region where Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran meet. This is where all the supplies are going. And it's not much to think that Russia, that's just right here to the north in the Black Sea, will start also supporting these countries. And you see why Russia always backs up Iran. They're literally their neighbors right here on the other side of the Caspian Sea. So there's another trade route. And this railroad system, if they get that complete, they can deliver goods and trade with Russia in this port right here in the Black Sea. But if they continue to flip flop, like there's no telling which side Turkey usually comes out on. Right now, they're supposedly on the NATO side, but it's not much for them to flip flop. And Erdogan in the past has stated, he supports Islamic State. So this is the World War III map that you have right here. This rail system's a big deal because that controls stuff on the ground. And like I said, Iran is a completely mountainous region. This whole thing, right, starting about where Iraq ends, it starts turning into severe mountains, and it goes all the way over into Pakistan and Afghanistan like that. So this would be a completely air combat area. And what's that mean? That means drone swarms. That means, F-35s, F-22s, bombers. So I wouldn't put it past the United States, because that would be key. And what this guy's talking about right here, I mean, I can't play the audio, but you could read the closed caption there where he's talking about going to the Pentagon and, those 7 nations. Iran is one of those nations. We already toppled all of those other ones. We toppled.
Yeah, that was, you're right. That's what I was talking about, that particular person there.
And actually, I said this last year. We were talking about this, or not last year. I don't know when it was, but when we were talking about the Pakistan-India thing, if you stretch this map out, this whole corridor right here that goes, if you imagine the round globe, it ends up right in Taiwan and Japan. So
Yeah.
this would be the entire combat zone of World War III. And if you just push that on over to the States, you can see that this is the area that they're fighting over to have. So it might not just be for control, like controlling the center of the chessboard in a chess game for war. This might be actually plans on who gets to live where in the future as the earth becomes colder and colder.
And wetter too. Now, if you take it east of going from India, that comes over to Myanmar, Burma, and then from there it connects through down into the Yunnan province in China, which is far west there. And then it goes right up to Kunming, and that's where all the oil pipelines were built over in Myanmar at Jakpi Port to do that facilitation from Chinese oil, so they wouldn't have to run around through the Malacca Straits and get stuck in there in the U.S. Bottleneck of control. So they just docked right in there. They did this huge, there was a gigantic port called Sittwe, Sittwe, Sittwe. And they dredged this thing for years and years and years with help of the Chinese. And they took this from, like an estuary, low tide, high tide kind of come in and out port for local fishermen, into like full on super tankers coming in there, unloading, quadruple pipelines. And I think they had 8 rail lines going over. And it was only like 150 miles until you came into the Chinese border. And then after that, it got into their system and net of distribution at that point.
Right.
But you got to think about now, I wonder what a topographic map looks like that too, because once you get over to India, you get over to Myanmar, that's the Southern Silk Road.
Yeah, that whole place.
That's the whole, like, we're going back in the past thousands of years here on the trade routes once again. Well, just the modern technology, we have a chance to blast through a mountain instead of taking a mule train, zigzagging across the thing. Like, we can just blast through a mountain, put a rail line through, or 2 or 4. Yeah, and the mineral deposits there too. What happens when that place becomes really green and really wet again? Well, it means double rotation crops, depending on where they sit on that equatorial band or close to it in the weather patterns. And you just wonder how much ordnance is going to pop out of the mountain, because I saw the most amazing video today. Now, I don't know if it was AI generated or what, but they had these missile launchers coming out of a mountain. And I mean, it was a vast cavern. And I was like, holy smokes, that is gigantic. And it was definitely a man-made entrance into the mountain. It wasn't anything natural. Maybe it was a natural cave, but they actually enlarged it, widened out, or whatever. But I mean, imagine how many hiding spots are. We got bogged down in Afghanistan for 20 years by the Taliban. Damn, can you imagine like a really well organized force that is completely embedded in those mountains? They could just pop up, shoot missiles, drop back in. Like with the armaments they have, it appears that
Well, well,
Iron Dome's failing right now.
look at that picture there, and you see that nice flat desert on the other side of the Persian Gulf from Iran. That's where the
Yep.
U.S. has set up all of their military. So if you think about it from a World War III, that other map that you showed, that line literally is the line of the north, kind of, and of Russia, China, and all of that. And you got to ask the question, why aren't they controlling that? And I think the answer to that is because they can't. They can't do it financially right now. But that may be changing in the near future because it's a strategic location. If you control this, you control the chessboard. That's the whole game. You got to control the centerpiece right here. The other
Well, you
half
got
of
to
this,
control the printing press too, and remove a new stablecoin standard. So you talk about can't afford it. I might disagree with that, but we can talk about that.
well, when you print and make your own money, you can do whatever you want.
Well, people aren't going to believe it. You can't buy weapons with like promises. I'm just saying, like that was a great map there. I mean, look back at it. Where's the
Yeah,
easiest flow of goods, services, and people through that area?
through those straits, which will all be combat zones or disputed territory. But it is really funny that you have Russian buildup on the north of that map, and on the south of that map for the last 20 years, the U.S. has been setting up bases at Qatar. We've been being buddy-buddy with Saudi Arabia. So it all depends on the launching pad for us. However, China and Russia live there. So if it comes down to stuff on the ground, who controls the ground? That would be them, and all we have is an air response. And I don't know why they claim it's because of the money. When the Soviet Union was failing, and we were giving uh, what they call Al Qaeda now, the Mujahideen or whatever it was, the freedom fighters back in the day, when we were giving Osama bin Laden and his bunch of clowns Stinger missiles so they could blow up those Russian helicopters in the 80s, and we're calling them freedom fighters. And then they became, the terrorists. So watch on the news, and you're going to see Iran fall apart. It's going to shatter, and then you're going to see new Islamic groups just spontaneously pop up to the east, right there where Afghanistan borders the Iranians. And who actually occupies that with intel and air forces? That's the United States, because we took that piece in the last 10 years. Matter of fact, we've been doing that exact map that he had up there in the middle, the one with the line in it. You can see the Chinese and Russian strategy, and you can see the U.S. strategy from Israel all the way over to Iran. They want to control that, because if they do, like you said, just like in ancient times, that's the control of the Silk Road. You control trade throughout the entire world right there, really. And not only that, what was it? It used to be called Constantinople, but now it's Istanbul, right there in Turkey. They're flip floppers. They've always has been. That's been like a strategic point of empires failing or succeeding. Who controls that area? And you can go back all the way back to the Babylonians, the Persians, whoever you want. It's always been a fight over Iran, Iraq, Syria, and all the way over to the tip of Egypt, which is controlling all those ports. That means your Navy does well. But we're in a total new ball game now. Now we're talking, just swarms of explosives falling out of the skies. Stuff's about to get off the hook, and it's going to be like a sci-fi movie, which will push people into kind of a comatose state in the country that they live in, to just go ahead and worry about the high food prices and the high gas prices, and put your nose to the grindstone. And we really can't worry about that yet. We're paying for it. Our kids are going to go take part in it, unfortunately.